Hi everyone, welcome to They Had Fun. I'm Rachel and I am back with another amazing story about New York City. And I am officially back from our holiday break. Now, as you may have guessed, like any good New Yorker, I stayed put for Christmas here in New York City. I'm telling you, ever since COVID, we've started doing it like this, and I cherish these Christmases now, and this one was no different. It was so much fun. Now, I want to tell you guys a little bit about what we did, and unfortunately for me to do that, I now have to admit to you that I gifted my husband a curated day for one of his Christmas presents. Okay, it's embarrassing. It's ridiculous, but it is the truth because every time I do one, I show them to him and he's like, I want to do this. This looks so fun. So I was like, all right, we have all of Christmas Day to ourselves here in New York City. Why don't I put something together for us? So that's what I'm going to tell you guys about. Don't judge me. Okay, we started off by walking the Williamsburg Bridge around like 3-4 o'clock. As we know, not super cold this year in New York City. Sorry, but it's the truth. Little overcast, just so lovely. No one's out on the bridge. There's like a few people running, a couple of people with their dogs, but not as wild as it usually is. Very romantic walking across that huge bridge all the way into the city. And then, of course, after that, we get to the Lower East Side. And then we were going to get some cocktails at the Swan Room. And these were so good. And you might not be surprised to hear the Swan Room is going to be featured again in this intro. I think you know why. We'll get to that. So we had some fabulous cocktails at the Swan Room. Then we walked over to Metrograph to go see a movie. We saw Shop Around the Corner, which, of course, You've Got Mail, the classic New York City movie, is based upon Shop Around the Corner, so that's why I got him tickets to that. My favorite thing at Metrograph is that damn snack wall. It's so massive. They have so many good options. We bought way too much stuff. Wonderful movie. Love going to Metrograph. If you haven't gone, definitely go do that. Then it was kind of cold at this point, so we jumped on the bus, took it to the East Village, and then we went and got some Chinese food for dinner at Chili, I think it's called. Now, this place was a little busy, which was great to see because this has always been a dream of mine and my husband's is to have Chinese food on Christmas night. It just feels like such a New York thing to do. I don't know why, but it does. And I was like, okay, this is the year we're doing it. Of course, he was so thrilled, ordered way too much per usual, but was so good. I highly recommend that restaurant. And then, of course, I don't know, maybe we made an ill-advised decision to go get a nightcap after that because that's just how things go when you're married to the person who has the podcast They Had Fun and is obsessed with New York City. So we went to the standard East Village because I also did notice that on the holidays, it's really not too many bars open, but you can always count on a hotel bar. So we went there, we got a drink, and then we went home, all just to say, fabulous holiday. I mean, that's just a snippet of everything I've been doing. You guys can imagine I've been having so much fun. If you can do it, try to stay in New York City for the holidays. Let's get into my Rachel's Recs for today because as I mentioned, one of them you already heard about. Number one at the top is the Swan Room. I had the best time here. Now, I had been here once before when it first opened. I don't know, thought it was fine, but something about this time, they have really fine-tuned everything. The cocktail menu is so fucking perfect. Every single one of them. I watched everyone's drinks come out. We got 2 different ones each, so we had 4 total off the menu. All of them so wonderful. Just like really well executed. Not over the top in that like cheesy sort of way, but like really thoughtful cocktail program. The room, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like sexy, sort of, but not that like cheesy, like sleazy way, just very mature. And it's not sexy in the way you got to go on like a date or something. You go with anyone. There was all sorts of people there. And I saw these people get the martini service. They were doing it upright. Okay. They got a seafood tower and the martini service on Christmas night at the Swan Room. That looked awesome. And of course, the second I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. So I'm doing it in a few weeks for my friend's birthday. Now, the Swan Room is in the 9 Orchard Hotel. I didn't say that. And I'm sure many people were very upset when this hotel got built because it's in Dime Square and it's ruining everything. But lucky for us, the bar is awesome. So you can just go to the bar and get a wonderful cocktail. Okay, number 2, I've done this before on the podcast. It's where I recommend something that is kind of or related to New York, but not a place. So I am recommending the movie Past Lives. I watched this over the holidays and it got me. Written and directed by Celine Song. Shout out to her because she did a fabulous job with this movie. As you might expect, it's like 80% of it is shot in New York City. Let me give you a little bit of the background here. First part starts in Korea. These 2 young kids have a little crushes on each other, first loves. Then the girl's family decides to immigrate to Canada. His family stays behind. They separate from each other. They reconnect. A lot of this reconnecting happens in New York City. It really has that love letter to New York City vibe that you want. The way she shot it, you can tell she loves this city so much. And if you do too, please go watch this movie. I'm telling you, okay, the lead actor is wonderful. Like, she's great. But the scene between these two men in the tail end of the movie, I was weeping. The nuance, the thought these actors had, it was so good. It's giving me goosebumps right now. I know this movie for sure. You can rent it, but you can also go see it at Cinema Village. It's at Syndicated too, so you have an opportunity to go in New York City and see this film. It is so, so, so good. And bonus, there's some Oscar buzz surrounding this. So if you see it now, in a few weeks when it does get nominated, you'll look so cool to your friends when you're like, yeah, I already saw it. So you're welcome for that, Rachel's Rec. Okay, go check out Past Lives. Go get a fancy cocktail at the Swan Room. Those are my Rachel's Recs for you. I'm so excited to be back and talking New York City with you guys. It's the best. Let's get into my truly amazing guest for today, because he was another recommendation from a previous guest. They were like, you got to get him on the show. And he said, yes, very important. He is a lifer. He loves New York so much. We're going to get into a bunch of that. Most importantly, though, he is the second generation owner and operator of Crest Hardware. You know it. You love it. It's been in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and a part of the community since 1962. Please welcome to the show, Joe Franquinha.
I love a good reggae horn entrance at all times.
Very important. You are the owner and operator of one of the go-to places that truly everyone knows. Like, when I was telling people I was going to have you on the show, they're like, what? Crest Hardware? And I'm like, yeah. I think I went there the first week I moved to Williamsburg to go buy something for my apartment. I have gone there to buy wreaths for Christmas. Yeah. It's just such a touchstone in Williamsburg. I didn't know you were second generation owner. Why don't we talk a bit about that? Like, your family being here, all of it.
So, yeah, my dad started in 1962. My dad had worked in hardware before the shop. He had worked at, I think it was called Liberty Hardware at the time. He was, working his way up the retail ranks there. And then the manager asked him, he's like, hey, we want to, name you manager, but you also have to take a pay cut. My dad was like, that's not how this works. This would be so much easier if I just do this on my own, which is laughable in itself because it's not easy. But at the urging of my grandfather, he said, take your brother on as a partner. So my dad did. And they went searching for a store, and they were searching around. They came to Williamsburg, which in the 60s was very, very different. Mm-hmm. So my dad found the spot. So he knocks on the door across the street from where we currently are. He knocks on the door, and all he hears from like the back of the store is, what do you want? My dad's like, I think I'm interested in buying this business. Lights went on like immediately in the shop. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. And he starts, chatting on my dad. And my dad goes, I'd like to buy the business and change it and turn it into more of a hardware store. And so he did exactly that. And it was on that side of the street for, I want to say, at least like 8 to 10 years. And then in the 70s, he came over to this side of the street, and fast forward another 8 to 10 years, they took over the space next door, and it became aisles 4, 5, and 6. They kept growing in size, but also growing in loyalty, and the relationship with the community kept growing, because my dad treated everyone equal. I think in a lot of ways, he was quietly ahead of his time with a lot of that stuff. And he was a fine example, and everyone trusted him. And that's the first generation story, I guess.
I was just going to say, we're like, that's already such a tale right there. And having like the thought process to be like, I'll go out and do it on my own, very New York sensibility. And then we're getting a little bit now to your place in this of like, when did you decide, sometimes you hear things like this, and I know this, like businesses that your parents run, you want to get as far away from that as possible. Sometimes you want to be, you're like, I don't want to do anything with this.
As far as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us how you reluctantly made it.
I, kept just growing in responsibility. I went to St. Francis Prep in Fresh Meadows, Queens. So I wasn't far, and then I'd come here and work. And then even I went to Fordham University in the Bronx, and then I was still working here summers and winter vacations, and came back here, moved to Williamsburg, and said, I'll work here for like 2-3 years until I, save a little money and figure out what I really want to do. At that point in my life, I was also a professional actor and a professional mascot. And we'll get into that, I guess, in a little bit, because I'm sure you're going to have questions about that. So
every New Yorker with all the multi-hyphenates. Okay, sorry, keep going.
It's just like, the thing about New Yorkers is like their side hustles always have side hustles. Yes. It's in the water. But so yeah, I was like, let me figure out what I want to do. And there really was no like specific like aha moment, like this is for me. It was just more kind of like a gradual kind of like I don't even know how to say it, like just more of like a gradual drip. Like
They got me.
but I also started to really love it too, because my eyes opened and I saw that I have more creative freedom here than most actors ever get a chance to, utilize sometimes in their career. And that was something that always my father always instilled, was like about enjoying what you do. If you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And my dad was the like prime example of that. He lived and breathed it. He loved retail. He loved the interaction, and I got to watch that and see that. And it wasn't without difficulties throughout my early part of my tenure, trying to gain the trust of the OG heads that had been working here for however many years, 10, 15, two of them are still here. Bob's been here 26 or 7 years. Tony's been here 52 years. So trying to gain their trust and make sure that I'm not just this little kind of ungrateful prick that's coming in here trying to like boss people around. So, you got to like earn your stripes around here. And I feel like I did that, bring back a marquee event for Crest, which was the Crest Hardware Art Show. But I was also able to, make it fun.
I think the part that I find so interesting is you saying, I got to have this level of creativity I was completely unaware of, because it's the perfect way of describing Crest. You could tell anyone like, oh, a hardware store. Okay, I don't know, you're going to get nails, hammer, whatever. Yeah. There is something distinct about Crest. People have had weddings in the garden center. The pig that everyone knows and loves. Like,
shout out to Franklin.
Oh, yes, like you guys doing the art show. It is not only a hardware store, it's a community space. There is a creativity level there. Yeah. And it really is distinct for New York City. And I just get so happy for you hearing, like, we all have these waves in New York City of these different people we have been and we become, and you wanted to be an actor. And I don't know, maybe that'll happen again someday, but that you found this other platform to release this creativity is just amazing, first of all. And second of all, it's working. Yeah. People are noticing and people love it.
You have to lean into it. If you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing the community a disservice. When, the generation before you works that hard to make sure that everyone, whether it's their first or 101st time in the shop, feels welcome. And then the thing that kind of like officially recognized Crest as this haven for artists was the Crest Hardware Art Show. And that was I think it was a big turning point when you look at the timeline for Crest. So there was this artist, and his name is Gene Poole. And he asked my dad for a little bit of window space to showcase some artwork. And my dad said, yeah. And I was like, wow, yeah, cool. And he was like, Joseph, he's like, because they'll look at the art. He's like, and when they're done looking at the art, they'll look and see our beautiful store behind it. And I was like, wow, that's such a great way of looking at it. And then before you know it, Gene was kicking the door open and letting in all these artists. He's like, Manny, we're going to do this thing. It's called the Crest Hardware Art Show. It's going to be great. It's all art about hardware, made with hardware, inspired by hardware. And my dad was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. More foot traffic in my store.
Yeah.
Who says no to that? So Gene had this show that ran from 1994 through 1999. And then Gene had left New York. The show went dormant, but it had left such an impression on me as just a young kid, just seeing this creativity within these aisles. Mm-hmm. So it always left an impression upon me. And then when I came back and started to realize, wow, I'm going to be here and I want to be here. It was one of it just makes me feel so good. It's just like almost like just those thoughts just fill my heart so much. Yeah, we brought back the show, but you also have to remember this is now, mid 2000s. There's this influx and absolute just kind of like tsunami of culture flowing into Williamsburg, of creativity, musicians and artists alike. So we wanted to kind of like have those worlds collide inside of the store. And it became our calling card.
It gets me so excited about New Yorkers and creativity and community. And it speaks so much to these spaces in New York City that mean so much to all of us and are invaluable. And you guys took that role on, and you are that for people. And I'm so glad to hear that you felt that for yourself as someone who took over. I mean, for some people, it's the local pizza shop. For some people, it's a bodega. For some people, it's the library. And why the hell not? Can it be a hardware store?
Why the hell not?
This is the thing that makes New Yorkers so great.
It totally speaks volumes.
If you are listening to this now and have any doubt in your mind whatsoever, should I go check out Crest Hardware? This is your sign. Go do something interesting.
Yeah.
Go meet people in a new community if you don't live in Williamsburg, and look at the success tale that it is. I love it so much. It's so New York.
Oh.
We've already been talking for a very long time. We've got to get in.
Yeah.
Let's get into our usual round of questioning for the podcast. And let's start with our first question. And that is, of course, when did you move to New York?
Upon birth, 1982, St. John's Hospital. Yeah, I was born and raised on the like Maspeth Woodside border over there in Queens. So yeah, I've been here my entire life.
My favorite, the feather in my cap.
The lifer feather.
Yes, I love it. It makes me feel so proud as a person who hosts. Listen, I'm a transplant. We all know that. I've been here for a very long time. But so when I am hosting a show about New York City, I need to have the real people. I need to have the people who are here and have the legitimacy behind them. So it makes me feel very good. So 1982, Maspeth border, all of that. Run us through it. I always have to the same thing to the native New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it dangerous? Did you go into the city with your friends and get drunk? Like, what was the vibe?
I was the product of the public school system for both elementary and junior high before I ended up going to St. Francis Prep. PS 229, IS 73.
Shout out
to IS 73. Back in the day, you could, at this school, when it was lunchtime, you were allowed to go out onto the avenue for lunch, which is like absolutely unheard of now. They're like, oh, great. So we're going to let out these 12 and 13-year-olds and expect them all to be back in less than an hour. There was a store called Cowboy Pat's, and they had the slush puppy machine, and they had all the gag gifts. So we would go back into school with like fart bombs and all this shit and be sliding them under doors. But then as junior high, it becomes, like different cats from different areas start coming to that school. And so you start being exposed to, different people and different things. I didn't go into the city too much when I was really young, but I played a lot of roller hockey growing up out on the streets, and I played soccer, for a club team. So a lot of my time was occupied with that. I was also in a lot of play production. So I was always busy, between like soccer and basketball and being in theatrical productions. That occupied a lot of my time too.
You're a real Renaissance man here with the theatrical productions and the sports and everything. I always wonder that about kids when you grow up in an outer borough. Just like with everything, your neighborhood kind of becomes your space, and that's like where you go. So it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the second question is always, why did you move to New York? Obviously, you stayed. The thing that I always like to ask with people who are born and raised here, especially given some of the history you told us of like, your parents own a business, you want to get as far away as possible. Why did you stay?
That's a good question. I think I was, in a good way, I don't say it in a bad way. I think I was influenced by the fact that my two older sisters both went to Fordham. Also knowing that like, if I want to continue this acting thing, there's one of two places I have got to be. And it's either here or LA at that point. So I went with what was more familiar. I was like, well, let me just stay here because I already know here and I've already started to build relationships here. So I chose to stay at Fordham. And I think it's important for people to hear too. It's like, if you're trying to build relationships and if you feel that calling from a young age about New York, just like start laying that foundation ASAP. If you really feel like, oh, I want to live there after school, like, fuck it. What's stopping you from transferring to New York now? And it was just also very familiar to me and I loved it. And there wasn't anything like, I had a really great upbringing. There was nothing that was like this deciding factor. I'm like, I'm trying to get away from this.
Yeah. It's almost like you talk to these people from New York. It's like, where else would I go? Like, what else did I do? I mean, it almost sounds like when I say it, I'm like, why'd you stay? It almost sounds like a bit confrontational. I meant it like in a wonderful way.
No, yeah.
It just once again hits on community. And frankly, Rachel, where else would I go? That is
yeah. It's like, come on, son.
Come on.
Like,
Okay. Considering that you are a New York lifer, which I love to hear, multi-generational lover of New York City, I have to ask you. Also, we somehow skipped over. You said something about mascot. We missed that. And maybe we'll get to that.
We could touch on that.
Considering all of these details, I have to ask you the most important question of the show. And that is, of course, Joe, what is the most fun you've ever had in New York City?
So with the art shows, right? I also wanted to get involved. Some of my favorite artists that I've appreciated for a long time. So Eric Hayes, he's pioneer from the days of like Herring and Basquiat, and people don't realize what this guy had done. Like Beastie Boys, Check Your Head, logos. He did the Stussy logo.
Wow.
So I could go on and on, but I won't. But I admired his work, and he was a customer, and so I asked him to be in the show, and he and gives me this emphatic yes, and I'm like, oh my God, amazing. But he also introduced me to other absolute legends whose work I appreciated. One of which was Lee Quinones, Puerto Rican immigrant. He was in Wild Style, like he's the Lee, like he's in that, So this dude is an absolute legend. And they've been in the art show now for a while now. Our relationship has really started to kind of get deeper, and I'm super appreciative of it. And so I see Lee one day, and he hands me a postcard invite to his upcoming show. I'm like, oh, dope. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to come to the show. So I hit up my buddy Yubi. I'm like, yo, Yubi, because Yubi's a dear friend, amazing photographer. I'm like, yo, Yubi, let's go to this art show in the city. It's Lee Quinones. I'm sure it's going to be dope.
I'm just thinking, what year is this?
2009, 10, 11, somewhere around there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a while ago. Okay.
So I have this card, and we take the train. We go into the city, and I'll never forget the address. 11 Catherine Slip. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, Catherine Slip. I never heard of Slip, Avenue Way, street, whatever.
Yeah.
So Slip is near the waterfront. It's near the seaport. I'm like, what the fuck? What gallery is down there? I don't know what gallery is down there. So I'm looking at this address, it's early Google Map shit. I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, yo, Yubi, this address is taking us into the projects. And he's like, what? I'm like, I don't know, man. I was like, 11 Catherine Slip. It's that building. That's the PJs, my guy. Are we going in there? Whatever this is, we got to go to this. So we go in, go up the elevator, and the elevator doors open, and it's Hayes, and he's leaving. And I'm like, yo, what's up, E? And he's like, homie, you're about to see the Holy Grail. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I got to go, but I'll catch you soon. I'm like, all right, peace. So now we walk down the hallway, and I ring the doorbell of what is this apartment. The door opens, and it's Luis Guzman. And I'm like, hey. He's like, hey, what's up? I'm Luis. I'm like, motherfucker, I know who you are. I'm Joe. Nice to meet you. So Luis Guzman, fucking straight up Boogie Nights dude is right here.
Yes.
Oh my God. So this is how the night is going already. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, what's up? He's like, yo, come on in. Fucking merengue salsa's blasting in the place. I'm like, oh man, this is so great. So I'm walking in. He's like, come on in. I turn to my right, and this woman goes, you want some fresh coquito? I made it myself. This is homemade. And I look, and it's Rosie Perez. And I'm like, yes,
Stop.
I would love some fresh coquito, Rosie Perez. Thank you very much. Yes, please. So she pours me her fresh made coquito. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening right now? And Yubi's looking at me like, I'm look back at Yubi. I'm like, yo, what? So all of a sudden, from down the hallway of this apartment comes Lee. And Lee is in a t-shirt and boxers. So I come to realize really it's all starting to kind of come into focus. So we are in Lee's apartment from when he came over from Puerto Rico when he was 2, that his mom still lived in to that day and possibly might still live in to this day. So the artwork that Lee was showing to everyone there was the original sketches that he used to do in his room before they eventually became the side of a train car.
Oh my God.
That's what Hayes meant when he was like, yo, you're about to see the Holy Grail. You're seeing the original drawings of some of the most iconic graffiti ever. It's still on the sketches, ripped out, it's framed, it's all that shit.
Where it all started.
And Lee wanted you to feel like you were in the crib. So he's just in his boxers chilling like he probably would have been when he was drawing all of this shit. And it was just and I come to learn that I thought he was handing out flyers. This was an invitation.
Oh, yes.
So I'm like, this was an invitation. And he was so cool and casual about it. I was just I just thought I was just no, but this was an invite.
Very special.
I was just oh my God, I'm here. I'm appreciated. And when you're young and you're trying to do something in the creative world and you're looking up to your peers for approval, and then all of a sudden you are in the fold then with that, I'm oh my God, I'm here. It felt so good. So we hung out. And we're drinking, we're having a good time, music's playing. I'm just, like chopping it up with everyone who's there.
Me and Luis just hanging.
Yeah, me and Luis Guzman just chopping it up in the kitchen. But that's the thing too, like everybody does at parties. Everybody gravitates towards the kitchen. So you're just around there and, just chilling.
Yeah.
And I just remember having such a good time and just like my heart being so full. And then, things are winding down and Rosie's like, where you live? It's like, oh, I live in Brooklyn. She's like, oh, I'm heading back to Brooklyn. Do you need a ride home?
Stop.
I'm like, even if I and I'm like, even if I'm like not ready to go home, I'm like, yes, please take me home. Thank you very much, Rosie Perez.
Yeah.
So Rosie drives me and Yubi home. And to make it even more iconic, she drives us, because of where we are, she drives us over the Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm just like, I just shut my eyes in the back of the car. It was like, Joe, you will never forget this moment, this night, and just how funny it was. And yeah, she just dropped me off on the other side of the bridge, which was on her way home, which made it a lot easier for me to get back to Williamsburg. And I was super appreciative. And me and Yubi were just like bugging. I'm just like, yo, what just happened tonight? It was so crazy.
This is the part of the stories that means so much to me is, like you and I have talked about, the drinking, the partying, so fun. Number one fan of all of that jazz.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you were doing all of those
Big
things.
Subscriber.
Right. But the thing that always sticks out the most are these moments. I'm not going to cry because I always cry. Are these moments in New York City that make you realize who you are and make you feel cherished and make you know that everything you're doing is not for nothing, And Rosie Perez, Queen of New York, driving you home. And
icon.
Yeah, being invited to come to this space and thinking like, I just go to the show, and knowing that he was like, no, I'm going to invite you because you matter to me. And I just know the way that you said it so perfectly puts it of like what that meant to you. And I don't know, they're never going to listen to this, but I do hope that they hear this one day and they know the impact that they had on someone. But I think all of us as New Yorkers need to know the impact that we have on people. And whether it's that one little moment on the subway or it's extending an invite to someone or whatever it is, they can have the greatest day of their life and so much fun. And I am so glad that you lived that moment and are telling us about it.
Yeah.
It is truly so fun, so beautiful, and so New York.
Thank you. Yeah. It's just like you said, like, especially then, and I still am now, trying to navigate through the ownership of this very, very important vessel.
Yes.
I do not take the responsibility of sailing this ship for granted. And everyone's along for the ride if they want to be, because we try to have fun. We try to be as civic-minded as possible, lead by example. When you're one of the oldest businesses, and I'm so proud of what we've done here, it was important for me at that point because it was like a great confidence booster. Like, oh, I'm doing something right. Like what we do here matters. Yeah. So that it will always stick out in my head. What a crazy night.
We might have found the one person on this planet that is more emotionally sentimental and teary-eyed about New York City.
I fucking love this place. So on my heart, I seriously do.
I love it.
Whether the rest of my days are in this city, this state or not, you won't be able to shake New York out of me. No way, no matter how fucking hard you try.
Oh my God. I'm going to cry again. Okay, we have got to lighten it up. The two of us. The show is about having fun, and I'm guilty as charged here. But that story was very fun, and I am with you. It is in both of our hearts very deeply, and I can feel it radiating from you so much. And all I can say is, and we'll put a pin in this, all of the work you are doing is successful, is meaningful, is happening. And I'm so glad you felt that in that moment. Yeah. I hope you feel it right now. And I hope you continue feeling it. All right. Considering that you can never take New York out of you, let's ask you my last and final question of the show. And that is, what is your favorite thing about New York City?
I think one of the most beautiful things about the city is your ability to, with pretty good quickness, step out of it. And what I mean by that is people forget, like, you want nature, you can have it, and we've got it all. The Rockaways, amazing. You want to go fishing, like you can go catch striped bass fucking a mile or two offshore outside of Brooklyn, and you can get these kind of like natural experiences. You like, I think there's more of a ecotourism than people let on, and that gives us a kind of like an opportunity to kind of like reset and recharge. And it's just such a reminder of what makes the city so damn special.
I think you're right. I think it's something that oftentimes gets overlooked. We all get caught up in like hustle and bustle or society, culture, foodie, all of these things. It's the Rockaways. It's Sheepshead Bay. It's frankly, Forest Park in Queens. Go hike a trail. It's the Botanical Garden.
Man, Forest is amazing. Shout out to Ridgewood. Shout out to Forest Park.
It's all of these places that we need to remember are still a part of our everyday life here. When we think we got to get away, it's killing us, it's too much. You can still do it. And yeah, you could go up to the Catskills, you could do whatever, but you also can do it in South Brooklyn or Queens or wherever you want.
Oh, you can go up to the Bronx, Pelham Park.
See?
I got married in Pelham Park, you know?
Oh, look at us. Just two people who love crying and getting married in parks in New York City, because I also got married in a park.
That's what's up.
Wow, you might be the New Yorker, the man of the love of New York. Dang. At some point, we're going to have you back or something to talk about all this mascot stuff that we never got. It's just lingering in the air. But Joe, thank you so much for being on the show, for talking to me about New York, for loving New York so fucking much, and for telling that incredibly fun, very New York story. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. I could do this for days.
Yeah, we can talk for hours.
Thank you.
Of course. Most of all, thanks, New York. They had fun.
Chapter 2 coming up next season.